We are thrilled to be with Kenny Rice, part of NBC's broadcast team, for the Kentucky Derby coming up this Saturday. It's September, Kenny. It's not that first Saturday in May, but what is the buzz? Is it the same feeling?
Jim, it's very different. This is a whole new world as everybody's experiencing on many levels. But the biggest thing at Churchill is there are no fans around. No one's milling about. It's all trainers right now, jockeys and horses. Very few media people. And of course, there will be no fans this weekend. So it's a totally different look at Churchill Downs. There's a lot of emptiness up there right now.
Tell me and tell us about Tiz the Law. Give us the scouting report.
I would say Tiz the Law has been a special horse this year. If the Derby had been run the first Saturday in May, per usual, he would have been one of the top two horses. As it stands now, he stands alone as the best horse. And that's a tribute to his trainer, Barkley Tagg. He hasn't missed a beat in training. He's done everything right. And if you go back and look at the horses that were on the Derby trail back in the spring before everything was postponed, he's really the standout of the group. There's less than a handful that are still going to compete in the Derby this year.
Tell us about the rest of the field.
That's amazing. Of the 18 horses entered, there are 8 50-to-1 shots. Wow. I don't believe that's ever happened before. That kind of shows you that everyone else is just taking a stab that they might be in the top 3 or 4 and get a piece of the prize or pull a stunning upset. But there's 2 legitimate contenders behind Tiz the Law. Authentic, trained by Bob Baffert, who is coming from California, and the horse many consider the best in California, Honor AP. He's trained by John Sheriffs and ridden by Mike Smith. Some might remember Giacomo, the 50-to-1 shot 15 years ago. Yeah. They're the ones that teamed up for that. He's going to be a lot less than that, probably be about 4-to-1, I would think, somewhere in that ballpark by race time.
Kenny, what has it been like in this industry, the racing industry, the horse industry, through the pandemic? Because we've looked at it through all of the other sports and how it's affected it. How has it been in that climate and in that neighborhood?
Jim, I think the biggest thing is everybody's had to rearrange their schedule. I mean, it's not unlike a coach or a manager when the season's been postponed or delayed. And that's the same with all these trainers. They have a series of races that they aim for starting in January, leading up to the first Saturday in May. Some of those races either went away or were moved to the summer. And because of that, it changed everyone's schedule. So very few of these horses are on what we would call a normal schedule coming into the first Saturday in September. And that raises a big question, just how good are they still at this stage of the game? Tiz the Law seems to be the constant in this bunch. But again, I think that's why we have a lot of long shots in this race, is everyone's taking maybe a shot that they wouldn't have taken back in May, because honestly, the horses that are running in the Derby, probably 9 or 10 of them, wouldn't have been around in May to run. That's how flip-flopped it's been this year.
So if Tiz the Law has the day that everyone expects, I always love when pre-race you at NBC Sports, especially on that horse racing team, kind of set the strategy. This is what the horse will do all the way around the track. What will that track be? What will that run be like for Tiz the Law? What should we look for?
Well, he's going to be breaking from the 17. Take a look at the last 3 positions, all the fans out there. That's going to be Honor AP, Tiz the Law, and Authentic. The 3 best horses in this race are all coincidentally together breaking from the starting gate. Tiz the Law at 17 needs to get out on an angle. He doesn't have to shoot right out to the front, but probably I would guess he will be in the ballpark of the top 4 or 5 going into that first turn and stay there most of the way. And then when they take the big turn for home, that's when he'll start making his move. He has 2 or 3 different gears, probably a little more acceleration than the rest. We'll see, but I think he'll be in a good position, certainly on the backside, to get ready to make his run. And when he makes his run, he's been putting everyone away. Talk about social distancing. He's been the horse racing social distancing champ. Nobody gets close to him so far.
Around sports, people are saying, hey, if you win the World Series this year, you're probably going to get an asterisk put alongside you because it's a 60-game schedule. If Tiz the Law is unbeatable and is the horse of the year and wins a Triple Crown, would that be appropriate to put an asterisk?
Jim, the purists are going to put, they've already slapped one on him because it was a 1.1 miles, not a 1.5 miles Belmont. My thinking is this: if he wins the Triple Crown, he is still going to do something no other horse that won the Triple Crown had to do. That is win races 77 days apart, the distance from when he won the Belmont to the Derby. And then if he wins the Derby on Saturday, he has to come back in a month and win the Preakness. So we're talking from June to October, keeping that horse ready. No one's ever had to do that to win a Triple Crown before. I think that deserves some credit, and I would put a very small asterisk, if any, beside it.
Kenny, when these horses come into these big races like the Kentucky Derby and the Belmont, there are hundreds of thousands of people, and I always wonder, does it affect the horse? Are people saying to you that really in these empty facilities now, crowdless facilities, the horse runs differently because there is no crowd?
Most of the horses actually enjoy the fact that there's nobody cheering and yelling, and especially at the Derby, because they never face 150, 160,000 people. They'll never again face that. So for the majority of the horses, I think they'll be calm. I think it'll be more of a burden on the human athletes. The jockeys, like most athletes, feed off the energy of the crowd. But once they get in the starting gate, it's still a race. It's just that build up coming out and hearing that first applause that's going to be real different, I think, for the jockeys and the trainers. For most of the horses, it probably will be best for them to have silence before they start.
Kenny, what has it been like at these places like Saratoga? What was it like at Belmont when that race was run in anticipation of what the atmosphere is going to be like at Churchill Downs?
Well, one thing, Jim, you can hear everybody. I mean, you can hear all the trainers talking amongst themselves. There's a few of us reporters down there, and a few of the jockeys come out, and that's been kind of eerie, and especially when there's races on the undercard taking place, and you're out in the paddock, and you might be 100 yards away from the track, and all of a sudden you look up on the board and you see a race is going on, one of the undercard races, because nobody's cheering, screaming. As one trainer told me, I wouldn't even mind hearing some people boo me just to hear somebody's voice other than the other guys I'm training against. Anything, any noise is good.
Hey, I have to ask you this from your own personal standpoint. I love it when there's a Triple Crown chance. Okay, when a horse is winning and keeps winning, and you take it all the way down in a normal racing year to the Belmont. But I have to ask you, that has to be a great anticipation for you in the business that you're in. And I have to take you back to that day at Belmont when American Pharoah came down the final stretch and was going to finally win the Triple Crown, and the roar of that crowd that day. I mean, that's bucket list stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. I've been fortunate. I've covered a few Final Fours and some NFL and MLB games when I was doing local around the Cincinnati area. But nothing compares to that noise that day. I mean, the crowd, you were engulfed in the noise and the screams, and people wanted to touch Bob Baffert, the winning trainer. And most of the time it's golf clap, and it's a very reserved horse racing crowd, right. Very similar to golf. That day it was a mosh pit. After he won it, people are actually trying to climb over my back when I'm interviewing Baffert just to shake his hand and say, well done. We've waited for 3 decades and finally a Triple Crown winner. I've never experienced anything like that. And honestly, I doubt if I'll ever experience anything like that again.
Yeah, I mean, it has to give you goosebumps, does it?
Oh, it really did. And when he started pulling away from the crowd, and you knew American Pharoah was going to at last be the Triple Crown winner that horse racing has been waiting for and waiting for, you could feel the crowd. I mean, actually feel it. You're obviously hearing them, but it got so loud in there. It was like being at the best rock concert you've ever been to, mixed in with a sporting event. And the cheers went on and on. I would say conservatively for 5 minutes after the race, there was still that buzz, and they brought the horse. Mike, it was so great. They turned the horse around, and Victor Espinoza rides him back in front of the grandstand, kind of to take a bow. And that's just when the crowd erupted again.
Yeah. I want to ask you this. When the world goes back to normal, and hopefully that is, ASAP, when it goes back to normal and racing comes back into its normal calendar, how long will it take for racing to get back in a healthy state?
That's a great question, and I don't know if they even know the answer now. I think there are like a lot of the sports that are trying to get going. Some fans will be allowed in eventually. There's a big race coming up, the Breeders' Cup, the first weekend in November, where they come from all over the world. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to have any crowd. Up until about 2 weeks ago, they thought they would at least have 25,000 minimum at Churchill Downs. As it turns out, as you said, it's going to be fanless. So I think the thing that they're looking at is probably what a lot of people are looking at. How's this NFL season going? How's the college football season going? Can they justify that horse racing too can now allow fans to come in? So I think that's where horse racing is.
Hey, Kenny, we'll be watching on Saturday. I've had a ball talking to you.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. As a longtime Browns fan too, I mean, it's I go back. A good friend of mine is Frank Minifield, another Lexington boy.
Oh, absolutely.
Frank and I go back 30 years together. So even before then, as I always told him when I was a kid, we'd come home from church and I thought Jim Brown's name was the Great Jim Brown for a long time. That's what my dad always called him. We watched those Browns games all the time when I was a kid growing up in Kentucky. We got Cleveland games instead of anybody else. So I never bought the Bengals, even though I'm about 70 miles from Cincinnati. It's always the Browns.
Well, we appreciate you. My God, you're a Browns fan, and I don't see a lot of gray hair there.
No, so far.
Thanks, Kenny. Thanks a million.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Take care.